brilliant economics students. Today we're doing some pre-response questions for Unit 1 and Unit 2 of AP Macroeconomics. So let's get started. So countries face trade-offs between producing consumer goods and capital goods. Very cool. We have country X, it takes 1 hour to produce a consumer good. So this is 1 unit of consumer good, and 2 hours to produce a single unit of capital goods. Country Y takes 2 hours to produce a unit of consumer goods, and 4 hours to produce a unit of capital goods. Alright? Alright, so we need to figure out which country has a comparative advantage. Comparative advantage. So, which one has the lower opportunity cost? That is what that is asking. So, we have, let's do this in terms of, I guess, consumer goods, because it's already in terms of 1 unit. So, produce one consumer good for country X and country Y. X and Y. So, we could say, let's try and do this in terms of consumer goods. So, one consumer good. So one on, let's write one consumer good. 1 unit of consumer good is 1 hour for X. Very cool. And let's see here for the country Y, a consumer good takes 2 hours. All right, for capital goods, let's write capital good. It takes 2 hours. So remember these are in hours. And it takes 4 hours over here. And if you look at the table, you can see that going from X to Y, it doubles in both the consumer and the capital goods. The ratio is constant. So just because it takes country X less time for each, from going from consumer good to capital good, it doubles for both countries. So because because the ratio is the same, we could say that there's actually no country with a comparative advantage. No country. That looks like a W. No country tree has a comparative advantage. ADV. And why is that? I guess, type this out. So the opportunity cost of one capital or one consumer good is half of a capital good. When in 1 hour we can make one consumer good or half of a capital good for country X, and for country Y we can make in some length of time we can make one consumer good or half of a capital good. So the opportunity cost producing producing 1 unit of consumer goods uh, of a unit of capital goods. Kind of a long explanation, but I think it gets the point across there. Calculate the unemployment rate. What is the unemployment rate formula? It is the number of unemployed people, number of unemployed over the labor force. So we need to first find the labor force. So I'll just put this as part B over here. And so the labor force is everybody who wants to be employed and is employed. So these are the people who want to be employed but not are not employed. Here's everyone who wants to be employed and is actually employed. So that's labor force is equal to 180,000 plus 10,000. It's all of the forms of unemployment. It's the frictional unemployment, the people who just want to get just got out of college and are just searching for a job. The structurally unemployed, the ones that are just like lost a job due to their job not being necessary anymore, and the cyclically unemployed due to some economic stuff. So 5,000 is 5,000, 5,000. So this is the labor force, and that is equal to 200,000. 200,000. And the so then we just divide the total number of unemployed divided by those people. So that's just 20,000. It's 10,000 plus 5,000 plus 5,000, 20,000. The total number of unemployed people, just adding up each of these different types of unemployment. 20,000 divided by 200,000. Oh, see, cancel these tens places. 2 over 20 or 1 over 10, which is 10%. 10% unemployment. Calculate the labor force participation rate in country X. All right. The labor force participation rate is everybody, the total adult population, let's say population, over the people in the labor force. The labor force over the total population. So we have the labor force 180,000. So I'll write C down here. So that is 180,000. That is the people in the labor force divided by the total population. What is the total population? We just add 180,000 to, it is not 180,000, it is 200,000. I misread that. It is 200,000. It was this one, that is the labor force. Because I just saw that 200,000. 200,000 over, so that is 200,000 plus another 100,000, so that is 300,000. The total adult population, and that is two-thirds. Two-thirds, or 66.7%. Okay, so now we have question D. This is draw a correctly labeled per, per production possibilities curve. I can speak English probably. For country X with consumer goods on the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. Okay, so we want consumer goods, consumer goods, and over here we have the capital goods. So that is the capital goods on the y-axis. I know that looks more like a title, but you know. And so now we can draw a line, and we're going to put a point Z labeled that reflects the current level of unemployment. So consumer goods, we get more consumer goods. So it's going to be It's going to be something like that, where consumer goods is further out, and we have some point of unemployment. We're unemployed, we're not at full capacity, that is our point Z. The reason I wrote this as a straight line is because it says trade-offs. So I'm that means there's a 1-to-1 ratio so it's not, if it was like this, that would be a non-constant opportunity cost. The slope of this is, I'll actually label the graph PPF, but the slope of this is the opportunity cost. And so the opportunity cost is constant. So we draw a straight line. What about this one? It's 2017 question 3. Country at full employment versus two types of goods, consumer and capital goods. Again, draw a correctly labeled production possibilities curve with the consumer goods on the horizontal axis, capital goods on the vertical axis. That we're going to have X represents full employment and a possible combinations in which both goods are being produced. All right, so we have our first point X. So I'll just graph this down here. So it doesn't say there's a trade-off, and we're going to assume that there's be some increasing costs. Let's see. It doesn't specifically say either, but usually you're going to have some increasing costs. Not quite like that. There we go. I'll label this PPF, PPF, and then we have our consumer goods on the horizontal, consumer goods, and over here, capital goods over here. Then we need a point X on the graph such that there is full employment. So this is our point X, and it is a mix of both consumer and capital goods. So that is not point Z, it is point X. Assume there's an increase in the country's national savings. Draw a correctly labeled model for the market of loanable funds. Market of loanable funds. Showing that the change in real interest rate increased from savings. All right. So we're going to go kind of reread that again in a minute, but we're going to graph. So on the x-axis for a graph of quantity of for a loanable funds market, we have the quantity of loanable funds. This is our quantity like in a supply and demand. And over here, we have the real interest rate. For the purposes of the AP exam, they really like that you say real interest rate here. So remember, it's just real interest rate. And so we're going to draw just our supply and demand. So this is demand for loanable funds, which is our investment. I'm just going to write for loanable funds. I just know that's like our investment graph, or our investment line, and over here is our supply loanable funds. That is our savings, our national savings. And so I'll label this 1 and 2, 1 and, I'm sorry, 1 and 1. And so now we're going to see that there is an increase in the country's national savings. So we have the saving axis is this. This is our savings. So if there is more savings to be had, then we shift our saving axis rightward. So show the change in real interest rates. So they want us to kind of draw this uh, R1 and R2. And I'm still going to write Q1, Q1, Q2. Then I'm going to label this supply to for loanable funds. And the reason it shifted from left to right again is because we have an increase in savings. The supply curve is like the national savings, and so an increase in savings is an increase in the supply curve. We shift it rightward. On the same graph from part A, what about Z? We're going to have a point Z that represents full employment in a new combination. Awesome. So we're just going to have another random point in a new combination of these things. So it still has to be a combination, and it has to be at full employment. So I'll just put point Z. There was also a question D for this, but it was about aggregate supply, and that is unit 3, so we will not answer that right now.